Hey everybody, Michael from RogueDeckBuilder.com here. We are doing another deck tech. This is just a pretty sweet idea, I think, that I came up with today. Just waiting for class, I was browsing on my phone, just looking at some of the cards, and I've always wanted to make a flash deck. Just the idea of it seems pretty cool to me, just being able to play a little bit more reactively to our opponent with our creatures and playing more creatures on their turn. Just forcing them to make tougher decisions in what they want to be doing, whether it be holding up stuff for when we flash in our creature or what have you. So this is my attempt at a flash deck, and I, especially with God of Ifara, God of Polis, I think this deck just works really, really well. And again, it's going to be tough to say. I'm going to be proxying this and testing it out in my group, my play group. Because this is the type of deck that, with aggro and stuff like that, it's sort of easier to see where the deck is going to be going when you actually play with it. But with a deck like this, it's extremely tough to say when there's so many different interactions, both with your own cards and with your opponent's cards, that it's tough to determine what exactly is going to be, how exactly it's going to work out. So from the looks of things, I think this is going to be an extremely fun deck. There's so many different cool things you can do with this deck, and Ifara just makes this deck. It's just extremely, seeing it in certain decks. It's when I first saw Ifara as one of the gods, I thought it was a little bit lackluster. But seeing it in some of the right decks, especially the new blue-white devotion deck that's coming out, they sometimes play this card, and just it works really, really well. And again, drawing a card is one of the strongest things you can do in Magic, so this deck utilizes that to its fullest, and it essentially allows you to, because you're flashing in creatures on their turn, it essentially gets you 2 draws on your turn, and then 1 draw on your opponent's turn when you play your own creature on your turn, if you do. So you're essentially getting 3 draws per cycle of turns. So it's a very, very good card draw engine, and again, I think it works well in certain decks more so than others. I don't think Ifara is a really good god, by herself, but it's one of those cards where if you have the right ways to utilize her, you just get so much value out of it. So this is my attempt at a flash deck. It's a Bant flash deck. I call it the Flashynergy deck. Flashynergy, a little bit of an odd word, but it's just a sort of a play on words there. Just because there is a lot of synergy within our cards to be able to utilize Ifara to the fullest. And so let's get on with it. So we're running with 24 creatures. Here are our creatures on our right. And I'm doing this on MTGO. As you can see, I don't have many of these cards here. But it was suggested to me on one of the comments on one of my last deck tech videos to possibly try doing my deck techs on MTGO, possibly just for a better visualization. If let me know if you guys prefer it this way, or if you guys prefer just me doing it on tappedout.net like I used to. Either way works for me. It doesn't really matter. So just up to you guys if you want me to keep doing it on this, or just go back to tappedout.net. But anyways, let's get on with the creatures. We're running with a playset of Sylvan Caryatids. Whoopsie. I just took one off the deck. There we go. Alright. Playset of Sylvan Caryatids. So this deck is a little bit slower. As you can see, we have a butt ton of 4 and 3 drops and no 1 drops, which of course is going to be a little bit tough for us. But this deck is supposed to be a little bit slower. It's a little bit more reactive to our opponent because we're flashing in things rather than playing things a little bit more proactively, other than possibly Brimez. So we want to be able to ramp into things, and because we have so many doubles symbols in our creatures, for example, Advent has double green, Boonseater has double green, Brimez has double white, and we just have a mixture of everything in between. So we want to be able to ramp into things as well as being able to fix our mana to be able to play things on time. So that is why we're including the Sylvan Caryatids. Might experiment with just mainboarding some other flash creatures, maybe like I don't know, Shamble Shark or something. I don't know. There's not too many good flash creatures, which is why I didn't want to just fill my deck with a lot of flash creatures. So Sylvan Caryatid, yeah, pretty much just helps us ramp into our more important cards, as well as just helps us fix our mana. Then we're playing 3 Deputy of Acquittals. Now this is a very interesting card, but I think this card works so well in our deck. I really actually love this card in this deck, and it's one of those cards that just works really well with Ifara. Reason being is because we can protect our creatures. That's probably going to be the one main thing we're going to be using Deputy for, is to protect our creatures, because in a format with just a ton of removal, being able to bounce back one of our creatures and save them is extremely useful. And if they actually do want to be able to kill off that creature, they have to use 2 removal spells to be able to do that. But it just allows us to, it's just another good flash creature for us to work with. Now, it's not a good creature on its own, of course, but it does work well with Ifara, because we're able to pretty much utilize everything to just make a steady card draw for Ifara. So it does work well with the rest of our creatures because we can get an extra use out of them. Most importantly, cards such as Boon Satyr, Briar Pack, and Lie of Sky Knight, for example. So we can Lie of Sky Knight, detain a target permanent. So this one thing I like about that is because we can detain, Planeswalkers, or we can detain Underworld Connections or something like that, which is pretty cool. Or actually, I don't know. I don't know if it works on Underworld Connections, because it's actually targeting this. You have to actually target the swamp, actually. So maybe that doesn't work. But it does work with, anything, any non-land permanent. So mostly Planeswalkers is what probably what we're going to be going for. Because we want to be a little bit slower, we want to be able to slow down our opponent as well. But anyways, back to Deputy, we can play Live Sky Knight, detain something, turn after, or if we have the mana left over, we can flash back. We can flash in Deputy on their turn, get back Live Sky Knight on our turn, and then pretty much play it out again to be able to detain something for another turn, or the same target if we just want to keep slowing them down that way. So it really just allows us to really slow down our opponent and force him to make certain decisions. But at the same time, because we're flashing Deputy in on their turn, we're able to do some really cool things, such as block with Live Sky Knight on that turn, but flash in Deputy, save our Live Sky Knight because it only has 1 toughness, so it dies to a lot of things. But we're able to block that damage, flash back Live Sky Knight, be able to play it out the next turn and detain something else. So again, here's where you can see just sort of a lot of the different interactions this deck can have, and this deck is pretty much full of those kinds of interactions, and Deputy just essentially makes those happen. And again, that just draws us more cards with Ifara, just so it just works really, really well. And then, of course, Live Sky Knight, we're playing 3 copies of those. Able to detain monsters, planeswalkers, enchantments with certain activated abilities. Just anything non-land, we can target and detain it, which is awesome. Bramez is a card that just works really well with Ifara, which is why I'm including it. I'll have to see how he goes. I prefer him with Spear of Heliod. I honestly think he's a little bit underwhelming by himself, but he just works really well with Ifara because when we're blocking or attacking, we're producing a creature token which activates Ifara. So on their turn, we can block, have a creature token come up, activate, and get an extra draw on our turn, and then we can attack and produce, even if we have nothing to play, we can just attack with Brimez, produce a creature token, and then get another card draw on our opponent's upkeep. So just these 2 cards just work really well together, which is why I'm going to be testing it out like that. Then we have 3 copies of Boon Satyr, just a really good flash card, and because we have some evasion through Live Sky Knight and Horizon Chimera, we can bestow onto those cards and just get a lot of damage in through those creatures. But this is another way that Deputy can work well. It allows us to use our creatures more than once, which is essentially why I'm including it. So we can always play Boon Satyr out, turn 3 or whatever, and have it ready to go, and then just use it as a creature, swing in for 4 damage or something like that, or leave it up to block, and then we can flash in our Deputy to pretty much replace Boon Satyr. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to just save it for a bestow cost, the following turn or 2 later, which is pretty cool. So we can utilize it in 2 ways. Then we have three copies of Horizon Chimera. This is just a flash creature for us that, because we're going to be taking a lot of well, maybe not a lot, but we're going to be taking some hits in the early turns, especially from aggro decks, which is another reason why I like Sylvan, is because it just gives us an early blocker we can use. Because we're running pretty much a lot of Shocklands, we're running 4 copies of Hallowed Temple, 4 copies of Temple Garden, and 4 copies of Breeding Pool, which we're going to be taking some damage. And Horizon Chimera allows us to sort of stabilize just a little bit. And because Ifara is such a steady card draw engine, once we actually get going, we can essentially recuperate most of what we lost through the drawing 1 life, because we are getting essentially 3 draws per full round of turns. We're essentially getting a 3 life, which is really, really nice. So this deck aims to be a little bit longer. We want to be able to buy time for everything and get Ifara online. So that is pretty much the goal of that. It's also just another way for us to get some evasion. So essentially, if we get Horizon Chimera bestowed with Boon Satyr, that is a lot of damage. 7/4 in the air, a little bit hard for our opponent to deal with unless they have Mizium Mortars or something like that. So, or some other form of hard removal. So that is pretty much the main reason why we're doing that. And again, this, especially with Boon Satyr, this all sort of falls upon Deputy and how well we can utilize him. So even if we have Horizon Chimera bestowed with Boon Satyr, and our opponent, targets Horizon Chimera with like a Mizium Mortars or something like that, we can always Flash and Deputy, return Horizon Chimera back to our hand, and Boon Satyr will still just fall off as a creature. Essentially, we have all our creatures still alive, so that is pretty sweet. Then we have 3 copies of Ifara, the main card in our deck, just the main reason why we're playing all the flash creatures and everything, as well as with our double white with Deputy, Live Sky Knight. It really isn't extremely hard to get Ifara online, which is what I really like about this deck. And because we are playing, cards such as Ifara's Enlightenment and Detention Sphere, those are just extra ways we can have permanent symbols to go towards getting Ifara online. And a 6/5 indestructible is, it isn't something to scoff at. It's quite a bit of damage and just another blocker for us to use pretty much. Then we have Briar Pack Alpha. We're running only 2 copies. I want to test with this card. It's a pretty cool flash card, I think, because it opens up for a lot of fun things. We can always reuse it as well with Deputy. So we can flash in, even like flashing in and giving Boon Satyr a +2/+2 makes him a 6/4 till the end of turn. And as you can see, like, if we play things right in the right way, we can flash things in at the right time and swing in for a lot of damage, which is what I think this deck is. This deck is, I think, sort of a pretty reactive deck, but I think because a lot of our stuff is flashing in, we're able to burst a little bit more than have steady course of damage. I think that's what this deck is supposed to do. Is this deck flashes in, bursts them for quite a bit of damage, uses cards like Deputy to bounce those cards back and be able to reuse them, and then we have cards such as Live Sky Knight, Detention Sphere to slow down our opponent to be able to burst them down at the right times. So Briarpack Alpha just helps along with that, as well as just works really well with the rest of our cards, I think. And then Advent of the Worm isn't a creature card, of course, but in all intents and purposes, it pretty much is just a 5/5 creature token with flash. So we're able to flash in a 5/5 for 4 mana, which is great. We can trade with Pelucranos if we need to. We can trick our opponent. It also just gives us another way we can activate Ifara, which is again what the goal of this deck is. And that is why I think we can afford to play, this sort of wacky set of cards, is because we have Ifara to keep drawing us into threats. So it allows us to keep a steady stream of flash creatures going and just be able to pump up more threats and burst them down, I think, is the way this deck is going to be played out. So can't go wrong with a 5/5 for 4. Also has trample, so if we later on in the game bestow Boon Satyr onto Advent, makes for a 9/7, which is very, very threatening indeed. So those are the creatures we're playing with. And also, even if we need to, we can use Celestia Charm for the 2/2 creature to be able to activate Euphara if we have nothing else to play. So that is another option. So moving over to the non-creature spells, we're running 4 Detention Spheres. It's just our premium removal spell. We don't have too much removal in this deck, and Detention Sphere hits Planeswalkers and everything like that, which is very, very large for us. It also does give us 2 devotion towards getting Euphara online. So not much to say there, just a really, really great card for us to use. Then we're running 2 copies of Euphara's Enlightenment. Now this is going to be a little bit of an experimental card, but I think it works really well in our deck. Because we're flashing in so many creatures, there's a lot of times where we can just keep putting 1/1 counters on our creatures. So again, going with sort of the way this deck plays out in the sense that it's a little bit of a slower deck, we can just slowly beef up our guys extremely large with Euphara's Enlightenment and just keep flashing in creatures as well as returning Euphara's Enlightenment back to our hand. And again, 2 devotion towards Euphara online. But another great thing about this is we are allowing our creature to get flying for the turn if we don't return it to our hand. So, even just giving a 1/1 counter on Boon Satyr and playing Euphara's Enlightenment on it makes it a 5/3 with flying, turn 4, which is extremely huge. And then the turn after that, we can always just return it to our hand. The following turn, play it on Boon Satyr again, making it, a 6/4, or play it on something else. There's just a lot of different things that I think we can do with Euphara's Enlightenment, and so it just works really well. And if again, it works really well with Deputy because we can save our creature at the same time as returning Euphara back to our hands. So we can always just flash in Deputy, return a creature that's getting targeted by removal or something like that, like a Brimez. And then we get both Brimas back to our hand plus Euphara's Enlightenment because we played Deputy. So again, you can see how Deputy is sort of a scapegoat, but I think he's just such a good card in this deck. And there's just he allows us to take a lot of different routes, which is what I think this deck is supposed to do. It allows us to play a lot more reactively with our creatures and try and control the game that way. So we're gonna see how this card does. I think it'll have its moments for sure, which is why we're only including 2. I don't think it's a key card in our deck, but I think when we have it, we're gonna be glad we have it. Then we're running 2 copies of Celestia Charm. This is just another pump for us, but one of the large reasons why we're playing it is to get rid of creatures such as Pelucranos or Desecration Demon. It's another form of removal that we have, and it works really well against gods as well, so we can, especially against mono blue devotion or something like that, we can always exile the god or any god pretty much, because I don't believe there's any god that has less than 5 power, if I'm not mistaken. Even Kamitra, I think, has 5, or maybe Kamitra's a 4/7. Anyways, Celestia Charm just hits a lot of things. But, of course, it is essentially, the last mode is a flash creature. So, again, we can flash in a 2/2 token if we need to. Draw a card with Euphara, an extra card. Yeah, so can't go wrong with that. Then we're running 1 copy of Beck and Call. So this is going to be a little bit of an interesting test. So the Beck part of the card, this is a fuse card for those of you who don't know what they do. You're allowed to pay both costs of the card to activate both things at the same time, or you can, well, it'll activate the left one first, I believe, and then the right side of the card, or you can pay for the half separately. But because we're playing Bant, we have access to both, all 3 colors, so we can play both of them if we need to. It's essentially another card draw engine for us. So whenever for the Beck part, till the end of turn, whenever a creature enters the battlefield, we can draw a card. So essentially what this means is we can pretty much get an extra card draw out of things if we play a creature, and it allows us to do a couple of different things. I'm only including one because I don't think it's going to be very impactful, but I think having the ability to just have another way to draw cards is pretty nice. And late in the game, if we can actually fuse it, we can essentially draw us 4 cards while getting 4 tokens onto the field with flying. So I don't think it's going to be an amazing card, which is why I'm only including one. I just felt that it's worth a try. We'll see how things go. But it does work well with Brimes. So like we can always cast the card just for the Beck side of things. Attack with Brimes. Now what this does is activates Ifara if we have it on the field, so that's 1 card draw. It activates Beck because the creature token entered the field, so that's another card draw, so we're at 2. And then if we play another creature on our turn, that is another card draw for 3. But because we activated Ifara, we get that card on our opponent's upkeep. So it essentially gives us 3 draws for 2 mana, which I think in certain times with Brimes it's going to be extremely relevant. So we're going to see how it goes. I think because it is sorcery speed, it is the main reason why I'm not including more. If it was instant speed, it'd be absolutely amazing, I think, in this deck. And in the off chance, because we have mana dorks, if the off chance we are able to activate both sides, we're able to draw pretty much 4 or possibly 5 cards if we have a far out and attacking with Brimes. So just a lot of card draw in this card with our deck, and I think it'll be a fun card to test out. We'll see how it goes. I'll let you guys know how it goes. Land wise, we're just playing 24 lands, pretty much all the dual lands for the blue white and the green white. Not including the blue green Skylands because the main colors that we're going to be aiming for are the white and the green because of the dual greens and white. We have no dual blues in our deck, so not as important to include more colors of those. And then we're running 2 basics, 2 plans and 2 forests, just to give us a little bit of an edge if we if we don't have access to Sylvan Caryatid to fix our mana, we at least have another way to get just another green or white source for Brimes or Boon Satyr or Advent of the Worm. So which is why we're playing the basics. So that's pretty much it. Again, this is the deck. Sideboard. Let's get on with the sideboard. So sideboard wise, I think this deck's going to be probably Control is going to be one of the worst matchups, I think, honestly. Well, it's a little bit tough to say. I think really, really fast decks is going to be a little bit tough for us. Burn decks are probably going to be tough for us because all of our cards get hit by a lot of the burn spells. But here's the sideboard. So we're running... I'll actually pull these out just so you can get a visual on them. So as you can see, a lot of the cards we're playing are sort of directed towards the blue-white control matchups or the mono-blue matchups, which I think are some of the toughest matchups for most decks, actually. So which is why we're doing this. Green-red monsters is coming up, but I actually feel this deck works pretty well against green-red monsters. We have ways to kill, to detain or get rid of their planeswalkers. We have some really nice tricks to be able to trade or win creature fights with our creature setups with their creatures, and I think we have in our deck, if we lock down Domri or something like that, we just have a better card draw engine with Ifara. But anyways, to the sideboard, we have 2 copies of Gainsay for the blue-white control and the mono-blue matchups, or any other deck with blue in it that we think that we should sideboard in, just a way to counter. Alongside that, we are playing 2 copies of Plasm Capture. So these aren't extra counters, but I think because we're playing, Simic colors, it allows us to play it, and it allows us to counter a spell, but I think the important thing is it gives us extra mana to use, which I think is really, really relevant in this deck because we have such a high costing, amount, we're able to counter, a 4 or a 3 costing spell and be able to have extra 3 or 4 mana to be able to cast, a free Detention Sphere or another Brimez or a Sky Knight. So I think it is really relevant in our deck, and it allows us to make the most out of some of our cards. It's going to be a testing card, but I think it does work in our deck. It's not an amazing counter card. I might test with just some negates or something like that, but we'll see how it goes. It does work well with Mistcutter Hydra, which is another one of our sideboard cards, because in the blue-white control matchup, especially if we let's say are on the play and we have Mistcutter in our hand and they attempt a turn for Jace, for example, we can counter that with Plasma Capture. That essentially gives us an extra 4 mana to use to pump into Mistcutter Hydra. So essentially, with that coupled with the 4 mana that we have on field, possibly 5 if we draw into another land or if we already have one, that's let's see, what, an 8/8 Mistcutter Hydra that we can essentially swing in for 8 damage on the following turn, which is just an incredible amount of damage, and definitely, especially since Mistcutter Hydra can't be, it has protection from blue, unless they have a Supreme Verdict, they're essentially dead. So that is why we're running Plasma Capture. I think it works really well in the blue-white control matchups in certain times. If we can actually get it to resolve, I think it just worked extremely well with Mistcutter Hydra. Then we're running 2 copies of Revoke Existence, just another way to get rid of gods and artifacts if we absolutely need to. Not much to say there. 2 copies of Rootborn Defenses, because we are a little bit of a slower deck and because we're pretty heavy on the permanents for creature-wise. We want to be able to protect those creatures and from Wrath effects, and because we have so many weak creatures, overloaded Mizzy Mortars or something like that definitely kills us as well. So Rootborn Defenses pretty much just allows us to keep our guys on the field. The Populate is actually relevant in this deck, surprisingly enough, to be able to get an extra copy of Advent of the Worm out, which can be huge. And because we are populating, it allows us to activate Ifara again if we have nothing else to cast. So it's a relevant card. It's the only, I think, way that we can do Indestructible and protect our guys if we need to. An extra copy of Celestia Charm if they are playing a lot more, if they're playing just a ton of larger creatures, it allows us to just have another way to exile them. It also, if we want to, in the green-red matchup, I think it works pretty well because we're flashing in creatures, we're playing a lot of tricks. It allows us to be able to win more fights, and it allows us to just pump our guys to be able to get just a lot more damage in. So I think just another copy is nice. And if they are playing a lot of removal, it just gives us another 2/2 creature that we can use to flash in if we need to. Then we're running 3 copies of Skylasher. It's just another card that we're going to be sideboarding in for the blue-white control matchups and the mono-blue matchups. Protection from blue, can't be countered. Just be able to flash in creatures, activates Ifara. Not much to say there. That's pretty much just the only reason why we're running it. Just one of the better flash creatures, I think, for those matchups. So that is the deck. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I apologize for the very, it's quite a long deck tech, but I think because there's so many different ways this deck can go, there's a lot of different interactions in this deck. So I just wanted to have a chance to explain myself, and you guys already know that I do love explaining my thoughts and everything and my reasonings for you guys, just so you guys can get the most out of what I'm trying to get at. So yeah, that's the deck. It looks like it's gonna be an extremely fun deck to play, I think. But again, it's one of those decks where won't know until I try, so I'm gonna proxy this deck up, test it, and I'll let you guys know how it goes out. But thank you guys for watching. I am gonna be doing more articles for roguedeckbuilder.com. Be sure to be on the lookout for that. I'm aiming for 1 a week, if not more. We'll see how life gets in the way. School is going to be a little bit rough in the next couple of weeks, so don't expect too many videos from me, but I will try and stick to at least 1 or 2 videos a week plus 1 article a week. That is going to be my goal. I'm I got my burn deck on my hyper burn deck on MTGO, so I'm going to be doing a series on that. So be on the lookout for that, and definitely bookmark roguedeckbuilder.com. Make sure to like our page, and I'll link all that in the description below. So be sure to check on those frequently. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.